So thank you, everyone. I have been working on CrossGov for the past 2 years on a case study on the French Mediterranean Sea, and more specifically on the area that you can see on the screen, the red one. I won't come back on every stakes that are in the French Mediterranean Sea, given that Sacho has already given some of the key main biodiversity stakes and economic stakes. But just for the French Mediterranean Sea, about fishery, there are some challenges such as 2% of fish stocks are collapsed and a bit more than 20% are still not recovered. However, professional fishing represents about 500 vessels and 650 sailors, which represent a low part of regional employment, 0.2%. But it still has a strong cultural importance. About the biodiversity stakes, one key important point about the French Mediterranean Sea and the PACA region is that 53% of the shorelines are protected by Natura 2000 and marine protected areas, but only few with restricted fisheries activities. In CrossGov, the question I try to understand and to answer to is, where is there room to actually integrate biodiversity protection within the fishery policy implementation mechanisms? To first answer this question, I try to understand first what is the governance of fisheries. I won't come back. The governance of fisheries that apply to French Mediterranean fishermen are under 5 scales. First, the international one that was very well covered by Sacho, so I won't come back to it, and the common fisheries policy that Jonas also covered. And these two are integrated within the national policies. So under the national scale, some decisions are taken more specifically about scientific research, which species specifically to cover. There is also a strong important role of the Ministry of Environment, which also cover the fishery policy. So it's a way also to that there has been an improvement on these national scales recently, given that fishery is covered by someone is making an art piece on my presentation. It's very funny, sorry. But yes, about this national scale. So fishery and ecology are now covered under the same ministry. And finally, there is an important role of professional organization at this scale. But where the implementation mechanism are where they take the most important role is at the regional and local scales, where there is the enforcement of these policies, the fundings, distribution of quotas and licenses. So I try to cover these both scales to understand where could biodiversity protection be integrated. About national scale, the implementation mechanisms that are key are policy drafting and planning documents. In France, fisheries and biodiversity policies are still drafted and designed in silo. What is also understandable, because fishery has a different goal, which is to cover, for example, employment development and sectoral competitions. But what was interesting is that there are 2 planning documents that also apply to the regional scale, that where biodiversity and fisheries can actually work together. In France, to implement the Marine Framework Strategy Directive and Marine Spatial Planning, there is one unique document for each maritime basin, which is called the Facet Strategic Documents. And in this document, one, for example, for the French Mediterranean Sea, it has a program of measure to apply the strategy, French strategic vision of the sea. And it is divided under two big chapters. The first one, to apply my MSFD, is cover biodiversity challenges and biodiversity measures. And the second part of this program of measure cover sustainable fisheries industry. And in this very specific document, there is about 20 measures in the French Mediterranean to cover biodiversity challenges and around 10 for fishery. And the fact that they are in the same document demonstrate that there is a way that they want to really try to cover both policies and stakes in the same under the same strategy. The second planning document is the MFAF action plan. MFAF has always been about economic development, but since 2022, there is also the will to cover biodiversity protection under a higher level. And among the 8 key objectives of this program of measure of MFAF, there is now one objective that is dedicated to biodiversity, strictly biodiversity, funding biodiversity measures. Under 2 hats, the first one is it lets each region, each maritime basin decide to support either awareness raising in marine protected areas or to fund action to limit plastic from ships and ghost nets. The second scale where I try to understand where biodiversity protection could be integrated is the regional and local scale. And here it's very important because it's where fundings and regulations are implemented. So I try to understand if we have regulatory mechanisms that apply to fishery funding mechanism, how can it be interlinked and how is it actually interlinked with biodiversity protection? So of course, in the regulatory mechanism, they are the ones that are related to the common fishery policies, such as licenses, quota, landing obligations, that are meant to achieve sustainable fish stocks. Under MFAF funding, they are also by business creation, productive investments, modernizing engines, but where I try to focus is where there is this biodiversity protection that is integrated. And when we mix, when we try to focus on the regulatory mechanism and biodiversity protection, 2 mechanisms were risen. The first one is the possibility to ban and under fishing periods, under time periods, some fishing techniques such as trawling. And there are 2 areas in the French Mediterranean Sea where it's actually possible to, where it's implemented, and it had a very positive effect given that, for example, hake stocks that were collapsed rose from 54% in a few years. And I won't come back under the funding, MFAF funding and biodiversity integration, but it's related to the 2 key possibility that I showed earlier, that I explained earlier. So just one last word about the solutions that I found in this case study. It's not complete, it's just 2, 3 elements that really struck me is that mutually supporting measures between fishery and biodiversity in plants are actually quite effective because it kind of force these plants, but also institutions to work together to implement these measures, and it's a way to move forward towards better coherence. The second solution could be to have these targeted fishery bans, which are quite effective, even if it's in small areas. And it could be interesting to also implement them more efficiently into marine protected areas, which are not, where fishery is still allowed today. And finally, the last one is to add environmental conditionality and effective criteria to the award of MFAF grants, to be sure that even if it's about business and employment creation, that there is this biodiversity protection that is being integrated.